لا عندي 106 سنين. 106 سنين الحمد لله.
Hello, and welcome to the Meet Us on the Abraham Path. I'm Anisa Mehdi, Executive Director of the Abraham Path Initiative. We come together here to bring the people and places and programs of the Abraham Path Initiative right into your home. And it's really nice to see so many returning audience members. Really appreciate seeing you again. We're here from England, Iraq, Jerusalem, and across the United States, about almost 35 of us here already this morning. Abraham Path Initiative promotes walking as a tool for intercultural experiences and to foster friendships across the challenging divides of our time. We emphasize the spectacular landscapes of the region that we like to call Southwest Asia. You may know it better as the Middle East. We prefer Southwest Asia because it doesn't carry all the political baggage that the term the Middle East does. And because you can see it right where it is on a globe. The whole region resounds with stories about the family of Ibrahim in Arabic. The legend is that they walked through Mesopotamia sharing hospitality with everyone they encountered. And this is API's ethical takeaway from the Abraham story. Of course, there are religious takeaways as well. We assert to you that traveling through that region, and especially as you walk through the region today, you will find warm, welcoming, and hospitable people that are honoring the traditions of Abraham. Over the past 12 years, API has stimulated the development of trails in Palestine, Jordan, Sinai, Turkey, and most recently in the Kurdish region of northern Iraq, and that's where we'll take you today. I'm first going to introduce you to Laween McCarron, whom many of you have met before, familiar face to the API family. Welcome, Laween.
Hi, good to be back.
So good to see you.
And you.
Okay, I'm having trouble hearing on my end, so forgive me if I speak over you. I'm sure it'll get fixed.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get there.
Laween is the first person to walk the entirety of trails that Abraham Path Initiative stimulated between 2007 and 2016. He's the author of several books, including The Land Beyond, which is the story of his 1,000-mile walk through the heart of the Middle East or Southwest Asia and Sinai. Laween is a fellow of the Abraham Path Initiative and of the Royal Geographic Society. He's a broadcaster for the BBC. Laween is from Northern Ireland, and he joins us today from the UK. Now, Laween's most recent work with the API is scouting new trail in the Kurdish region of northern Iraq with Laween. Will you come on camera? He's going to come. There he is. There he is.
Hi.
Laween Mohammed is here joining us today from the Citadel in Erbil, Iraq, which is the capital city of the Kurdish region of northern Iraq. And there he is. You can see the Citadel behind him. Laween, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Very well, I'm doing well. How are you?
And what about your face mask? And who's your friend? Introduce us.
McCarron, our facilitators. He has been with us for all API trips, from scouting till the last trip that we did. He was with us from all trips of API trips. So if you don't mind, I can take off my mask because actually nobody here, just two of us. I think we cannot hear you. No.
While we're waiting, I'll just jump in for people who are watching to say that Kurdistan has just gone into another lockdown. Laween, you'll probably tell us a little bit more about that in the interim. But as an example of the sort of people that we've been able to work with in the region, I always think Laween and Moran, between them, can make anything happen. And the fact that they can get to the top of the Citadel in the midst of a lockdown is the best possible example you could ever want of that. Because Laween, right now, everyone else is hidden away, right? They're all at home under a 5-day curfew.
I think I have a problem in the audio as well.
Oh, you have it as well?
Yeah, I cannot hear you well, and Anissa, I lost her voice. A tour?
Yeah, why do you start with a tour, Laween? If you can't hear us, you start with a tour.
Yeah, let me just tell you that I'm currently on the top of Erbil Citadel, which we call it in Kurdish as a qalat. Qalat is considered as a sign of resistance for every single Kurdish, because everybody who tried to invade, all the invaders who tried to invade Kurdistan or occupied Kurdistan, they have been defeated here in this citadel. So the citadel is its history back to 600 years BC, and it's 400 meters above sea level. So here is the entrance of the citadel. With the Kurdish flag, I don't think that we cannot, because of the light, we cannot see a flag. So now I'm in the entrance of the citadel. Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what it's like there normally, how busy it normally gets.
As you can see, it's completely empty. The mosque is Khanqa al-Khalidiyya Mosque, 250 years old mosque. Normally it's crowded. Here it's a 24 hours to the midnight, it's crowded, but because of the lockdown and the curfew, so we cannot see anybody here.
Laween, what is this other building we're seeing right now with the rounded walls across from the mosque?
It's a new building because we had some buildings here in the center of the citadel. So the government had created this like a garden or the waterfall, and they replaced them with that building, the white building, replaced people and gave them lands there. So the shops turned to the other side of the citadel, the other side of the mosque. So all the shops have been turned to the modern shops. They are shops that were here in this place and then turned to the other side of the mosque. The white building, if you mean it.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
It's so interesting to see how quiet it is. It compares to the to what we see here, that our neighborhoods are quiet and that our downtowns are quiet. Slowly, we're getting a little bit more activity as some movement restrictions lift, but it's really a feeling of unity to see how similar our situations are. What you're experiencing.
Crowded here, you will see tourists, you'll see people, journalists, TV reporters. They are just coming here for. Erbil became like a center for the media, for the tourists in all Iraq. So, and you see it's empty. So strange for me as well to see it's completely empty. Nobody here, you know, just it's completely quiet.
Well, we imagine that it may change slowly. Let's start with where you and Leon met, and let's move toward what we hope may be the changes to come in the future. How did you guys meet?
I met him 4 years ago. A mutual friend of us called Claudio Von Planta provided him with my contacts to contact me if he came to Kurdistan for help, to know the city, to somebody to be with. So we met 4 years ago in Erbil, and then we decided to find the trails tales, telling stories, making documentaries in Kurdistan as he was interested to know more about Kurdistan. And I love this thing to him. So he was so interested to know more about Kurdistan. For me as a Kurd, as a Kurdish guy, I love to work with him and to do something together. Making documentaries, we made some documentaries, we found the trails and tales and explore Kurdistan together. 4 years and of tours, trips, and exploring Kurdistan together. So if
Very
Leon has something
exciting.
to say about Kurdistan as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was such a great first encounter really for me. I came to the city and I was actually trying to write a story about another city in federal Iraq, and I came there and it was a very difficult time. It was just when the offensive was beginning to liberate the city of Mosul, and I was trying to get to a city called Karakosh, and this mutual friend, Claudio, who's a very talented, wonderful filmmaker and a real inspiration as well, said you should meet Laween, and he's the sort of person that when he recommends you meet someone, they're going to be interesting. But it was when I arrived in the Kurdish region first, I guess I knew a little bit about the landscape and that it was mountainous, but it wasn't in my mind at all to go off and hike and explore and have all of these fun adventures and journeys that we've made it. But it was in that first meeting with Laween, he said, really, if you're going to spend some time here, you should come into the mountains and see what Kurdistan's really like. This was the first time I'd been pitched the idea of this is the other Iraq. Come and see this. And with Miran as well, who's in the background, we've made many journeys now for 4 years. And I said it at the start, but between the two of them, they can make anything happen. And they're not just the best collaborators and friends to have in the region, but the best people to make anything happen.
That's exactly what you need when you're going into a place where your own language abilities are limited and you're just getting to know it. But I know you've become quite a fan of Erbil, Leon, and have even temporarily rented an apartment there. I wanted to make up for
it. There right now.
Yeah, just I don't know if anyone got to hear the words I had of introduction about either of you. Did they hear what I said about you, Leon, or
I don't think they did. I don't think they did. Although I mean, I'm sure. Let's give Laween his big billing and introduction.
I definitely. What I want you to know about Laween, everybody, is that Laween. You already know how competent and skilled he is because of Leon's comments. He also works with API fellow Stephanie Saldana in her cultural heritage research work. But he's a trained professor of English literature. And he's fond of Christopher Marlowe, Charles Dickens, Samuel Beckett. And this is something you might not have expected. It was really very cool for me to hear about that. Laween is Kurdish from Syria and had to flee Syria because of the civil war. He went to Iraq in 2012 and made Erbil his new home. And so I wanted you to know about that, in addition to the work that he does with production companies and nonprofits such as the Abraham Path Initiative. And then I know at least you got to see Leon's book. Leon is the first person to walk the complete circuit of trails that we initiated between 2007 and 2016, and has been a part of our family ever since. So why don't you, audience, you're welcome to write questions into our question container on your control panel, and I will share them with Leon and Laween as we go. I'd like you to tell us about the project you're doing for Abraham Path Initiative in the region, the scouting trails and so on.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start, and then Laween can take over with his in-depth knowledge as well. I mean, it really began from those first journeys that we took, which were just recreational. Laween wanted to show me some of the wonderful landscapes and places that he'd come to know in the Kurdistan region. And it occurred to me, when I was there, having seen how trails had been developed in other parts of the region, that this was a place that was perfectly suited for this, and that all the benefits that trails bring elsewhere would be really apt for this area. So we began to talk about it. So we looked around for some pre-existing trails, and of course what we had already been doing was just walking the trails that had been there for many thousands of years, starting with the old donkey trail in a town called Amity, way up in the mountains, a kind of ancient town on the top of a hill. And I'll let Laween talk about Amity because
Silk Road
yeah,
City.
and Laween, maybe you can tell us a little bit about Amity and that first trail that we found together. That was the first one we went to.
I think all these trails started from the Amity. When we start, as Amity was the place that I wanted to visit, even if I was in Syria. When I visited with Leon, we saw how spectacular place in the top of this mountain. They built this town, historical town, and the gate was really the gate to our trails. The gate of Amity, which called Mosul Gate, was a gate, but the gate for all our work for API, for documentaries. We found the trail that's going to Mosul, the donkey trails that's going. They were used. Amity was a trade center for all the area, for the empire, the old Kurdish empire. So we said, let us try to walk on it, since Leon is, a great walker and hiker. And I love it. So we try to explore it, to hike. Let us hike this way, to scout it, since we don't have a map, we don't have a. So the first year or 2 years, we were just scouting. We just going and walk to scout, to explore, to discover places. And then with API, we started to do it in a really professional way with the team, with the maps. Then at the end, we had our guests. So everything started from the gate of Amity, from Mosul Gate in Amity, and then Acre as well. Amity and Acre being two of the most important places, historical places in the history of Kurdistan, not only in the area, in all 4 parts of Kurdistan. So everything started from there, and then we could create these trails.
So, I mean, in a really broad sense, what we've been doing so far is just gathering information, right? We've been scouting to try and gather and document as much as we possibly can on the trails that already exist in the region. And if you can imagine, you can see it in the map below. This is the sort of east-west corridor in the Kurdish region. And that's where we've focused most of our attention so far. And these are the areas that we find to be the most exciting to walk in, whether that's for natural beauty or the history, the hospitality. There's so many reasons. So the Amity area, Acre, Barzan, Rwanduz, and out to Choman, which is out by the Iranian border, if that helps orientate.
Leon, sorry to interrupt. We had a couple of people who are wondering what surprised you most. You've walked in so many places. What surprised you most when you got to the Kurdish region of northern Iraq?
I guess it's a good question. I mean, what surprised me most was that I went there to try and write this story about a different city, and within a couple of weeks, I was just off walking in the hills. And it was amazing to me that at the moment that I landed in Erbil for the first time, it was, of course, it was a very tense time in the country in general at that point, but it made the juxtaposition between the interpretation of what Iraq is to a lot of people as a center of conflict and as a dangerous place, with what the reality is of Laween and McCarron and I walking through these mountain villages and staying in people's homes and drinking tea. It brought that really into sharp focus. And so I think that was something I maybe had learned to hope would happen when I went to places that are often misunderstood. But it was surely the biggest surprise to have got there and find myself in this beautiful, alpine paradise, whilst the city of Mosul and all of that was just, this was the end of 2016, whilst all of that was, only 50, 60 miles away.
Well, I'll say as an Iraqi American, I really appreciate you expanding our understanding of the people and the places beyond what we see in the headlines. It makes a huge difference in so many ways. Take us along your journey a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's what was so so wonderful about working with with Laween and with the rest of our collaborators is that there hasn't, I think Laween, you probably would agree with this, that a lot of the people we met along the way felt as if they'd never had a chance to show off all of the natural beauty and histories of their places, because the only way that anyone from the outside and even people from the inside had viewed where they were is through the lens of conflict and suffering and hardship and so on. So to be able to bring the positives out was something that was really exciting. But if we look at the map again, just to quickly orientate our listeners, and then we'll move on to some of the pictures. So this is, if you can imagine, Amity, just above that is Turkey, and you can see where the Turkish border comes down. Iran is off to the east. There's a border close to Choman, and then on the other side, of course, you're getting towards Syria. So the last 3 years or so, and particularly the last year, Laween and I and Ben from API and a number of other people who've come and gone from our journeys have just been scouting to see where the most interesting areas are. And the first picture that we've got is of Laween and I on Mount Halgurd, and Laween chose this as this is actually a place which is worth saying is not on our trail that we're hoping for, because it's quite technical and quite intense. But in terms of adventure, it's quite exciting. In terms of places that you don't expect to find in Iraq or in Kurdistan, it's pretty apt. So Laween, tell us about your experience of trying to climb Mount Halgurd.
This photo speaks itself. Despite trying to climb and hike for 2 days to reach the top of Halgurd peak, and despite the lighting and rainstorm that had in our tents with the Ben and Miran and you, but we were happy. We were extremely happy. To be on the top of the Halgurd mountain, which is the highest peak in Kurdistan. It was really an amazing experience. It was really, really an amazing experience. To as soon as you reach on the top, you feel that you forget all your, if you are exhausted or you are tired or you will forget everything. You will feel something special on the top, and you can see the faces in the photo, how happy we are, how glad we are to be there.
Laween, I'm looking behind you and I'm seeing snow-capped mountains. What mountains are those? Is that facing Iran there, or is that facing north toward Turkey or toward Syria?
No, it's Iranian border. Halgurd mountain, in front of it we have Sakran mountain, but in the photo is a Iranian border, mountains inside Iran. It's in Iranian border.
These are snow-capped most of the year. So, I mean, you can climb them in winter, but it's really pretty difficult. Halgurd is 3,600 meters, so that's just under 12,000 feet, I guess. So they're pretty big. They're not small mountains at all. And to climb them does require quite a bit of technical expertise and a good deal of luck as well with the weather. But it shows you the variety of landscapes that we have in this relatively small part of the world. So the second picture we've got as well, which is another one of these moments on our journeys. This is with another trail scouting collaborator, Tom Allen, who's done a lot of work in Armenia and in the Caucasus. This is another one of, I think, Laween's highlights. So Laween, maybe you can tell us where we are here and why you like this picture.
Yeah, first of all, let me say that as a walker, as a hiker, you should always expect that you have one day someday you end with nowhere to stay because of the hiking. One day takes longer than what you think. So maybe you end in some place that no place to stay. But in Kurdistan, you can feel home everywhere, really. This photo, we ended in Dinarte town, and we had no place to stay. So we stayed at Peshmerga training campus. Peshmerga, just to clarify for the audience, they literally means the sacrifiers, the people who face death. They are the Kurdistan. They are Kurdistan forces, military forces. So we stayed with them. We spent the night with them. They cooked for us in the midnight, and we drank like a dozen cup of teas. Yeah, it was really another day of to be remembered. We stayed with Peshmerga campus. We stayed with them. They provide us with the heaters. It was extremely cold. They brought heaters, more blankets. They cooked midnight. Really, at the midnight, they start to cook for us, and we had a good experience there with Peshmerga in Dinarte town, the town called Dinarte.
I just want to point out that right now, live behind Laween, you're hearing the call to the evening prayer in Erbil. And this is really related to Abraham too, because the call to prayer was an instruction by God, and it says in the Quran, to invite people to come and pray, particularly toward the shrine called the Kaaba at Mecca.
Yeah.
So I feel very connected. It's nice to hear the call again.
Yes, it's nice. And this is the like a bridge of cultures, a bridge that connects cultures together. Now it's 7:30 local time in Erbil, time of prayer. So
it's a nice sound. Our next picture is a very different type of region as well, and I mean it's one of I think for both Laween and I, and for Anwar who's sitting on the tree, and for Ben Barrows who's in the tree. This is probably all of us would agree this is one of our favorite areas to walk in the whole region, and it's in the Barzan area. So Laween, tell us about the day we found this.
My favorite photo in my favorite spot in Kurdistan, Zorakvan area. Zorakvan belongs to Barzan area. Imagine walking and hiking for hours in high temperature weather, and accidentally you found a spot of waterfall, shadow, and really cool area. So without any thought, you will jump inside the water. We were hiking for hours in the high temperature, and then we found this area, Zorakvan waterfall, with Ben, Anwar, our local guider, and Leon and myself. We just jumped inside the water to refresh or to cool. And Barzan, let me just clarify, Barzan area in Kurdistan has its own rules regarding environment protection. They have hunting, fishing, cut trees, are all of them are forbidden in Barzan area. That's why till now you can find really rare kind of animals there, like bears, like wild goats, deers, eagles, and Barzan still has its spectacular landscapes, stunning landscapes, because there is nobody can cut the trees. It's not allowed to cut it, and Barzan has its own rules regarding environment protection.
We have a question here for you, which is, what kind of facilities are available for hikers? How developed is this trail at this point?
You mean? Well,
okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Well, I mean, at the minute, there are a number of people who hike in the country, but there aren't really any facilities for hikers. There's a growing culture of recreational hiking and walking, and there are perhaps 40 groups around the region who go out and hike on the weekends, the sort of thing you might find in our countries, but there aren't really any facilities yet for hikers, and there isn't such a thing as a long distance trail. People just know nice spots that they can go to and hike, and so that's part of our long-term aim here, but that's quite a ways off yet. I mean, we'll in the next kind of 10 minutes or so, we'll kind of circle back around to that and maybe get a little bit more information on exactly where we are right now in that process. But if you can imagine the whole journey of designing a trail as a trail itself, then we're still in the first few steps. You know, we've just kind of set out onto the path ourselves, and this is the fun part of it. We walk tens and hundreds of kilometers to learn as much as we can, and then from that we distill down what are going to be the most impactful parts, what tells the best story, where's the most potential to develop, and have people who live along the corridor of their path be part of it, and be able to really have them invest in it as well, and be able to tell the story for years and years to come. Which is actually, I mean, if we move on to the next picture, this is another part of our process, which is as well as just enjoying the landscapes and in the hospitality, we really are trying to research as much as we can. And it's easy to research about places that are there and in front of our eyes and obvious, but so much of the beauty of this region is in its depth of history, as well as in its interest in a contemporary sense. And so this is a family that we met on that same day in the Barzan area. And Laween, you can tell us their story, because what often happens is we'll meet a family or some individuals on the trail, and of course we send Laween to introduce himself, to introduce the mission that we're on, and to ask them what they can tell us about where we are.
Normally we met many families, but inside the villages, towns, like 5 houses, villages. But to see one family in one spot area alone, just one family, it was strange for us. So we met them accidentally, Murad family in Barzan area. They had a village called Osaomoran in this area 30 years ago, but their village had been destroyed. But every year they came 2 months, June and July, to this spot of their family, for their village with their livestock. They brought they are bringing their livestock here to live 2 months, and they live really simple, easy, natural life, living really simple, natural, in a tent, with no technology, nothing, just enjoying living with the livestock for 2 months. Then they will come back to their town that they moved to. So we met them. We heard some stories from them, and they invited us to the lunch, a healthy lunch, a healthy food, because all the stuff of what they are eating, what they are drinking, all of it, all the stuff are natural and from their farm, from their handwork. So what I mean by healthy food, that's everything was made from their farm, the vegetables, meat, everything was local from their tent or from their farm close to them. So they are coming every year, 2 months a year. They're coming to this area in the June and July for their livestock, and then come back to the town for the rest of the year.
And if we imagine now that this is the kind of central area of that east-west trail corridor that we looked at, with the high snowy mountains in the east by the Iranian border, the next picture that we've got, which is an area that Laween and I both really love as well, is right out in the west of where we've been to. In fact, this is the western extreme of both the Kurdistan region. It's where it more or less meets the boundary with federal Iraq, and it's also the westernmost point that we've scouted. But Laween, tell us about Al-Khosh and what we're looking at.
Al-Khosh is a Christian city but I think it was our last trip, I think, before COVID-19 pandemic. So it's Robban Hormuz Monastery. This monastery that we see in the photo is in Al-Khosh town, a Christian town close to Duhok city. The monastery is like a masterpiece, and built on the top of the mountain, and its history back to the 640 BC. It's like a spectacular place. in the top of the mountain. It's not famous only in Kurdistan or only in Iraq. It's in all Middle East. They came every year. They have 100,000 of people who come to visit this amazing place, amazing, a holy place. It's a holy place on the top of the mountain. And Al-Qosh also has as a sign of coexistence, they have a tomb of Prophet Nahum for the Jews. So
Nahum is Noah. Noah in English, yeah.
Noah. Okay, so it's a sign of coexistence in the Kurdistan. In every single Kurdish village, you can see the families from different religions, from different ideologies. So everybody go to Al-Qosh, he will feel absolutely will feel really a nice, amazing feeling how to be in the top of the mountain in the holy place, monastery. They called Roban Hormuz Monastery in Al-Qosh town. Yeah.
So when we got to Al-Qosh, we tried to find a path that would, or a series of paths and trails that would join the monastery to some of the other areas that we knew better. And we haven't quite finished that linking part yet, but that's one of the things we'll go back to do. So we've, Laween and I we digitally record all the tracks that we walk and then study the satellite imagery as well to try and see how they might connect. And we've probably walked in the last year or so around about 400 to 500 kilometers, so 300 plus miles of different trails, and that's led us to about 175 kilometers of continuous trail, which runs from Akre to Choman. And so let's say 120 miles, something around that. And the next phase will be to have a more systematic approach to starting to develop that, add in some of the really to assess what the next 3 to 5 years will look like as we bring that to the next stages. So
hey, Leon, may I interrupt here? Matthew Teller's with us, and he was wondering, how fit do you have to be to do all that walking and to walk the trails you're beginning to develop for the Abraham Path Initiative in Kurdistan? How fit? Are they easy or difficult?
Well, that's the beauty of these long distance trails, is that you can design your own experience. And so, some of the days that Laween and I have walked that we feel are some of the day stages of this trail are the best ones are less than 10 miles for a day, because there's so much to see and do along the way. And this is it's not about fitness. It's not about showing how tough you can be or trying to exhaust yourself by the end of the day. It's about the immersive experience and about all of these different things that you will see and do and feel along the way. There are certain sections through the mountains that are more physically challenging, but we try and make those stages shorter in distance so that compensates for it. So I guess I'd answer the question by saying the scouting part of the process, understandably, pushes us all a little bit more, because we sometimes cover 30, 40, 50 kilometers in a day to try and get as much in as we can and gather that information as quickly as possible. But when we eventually turn it into an experience for others, the whole point of this is to make walking accessible and through walking to learn everything else about the region. So it should never be something that excludes anyone. And we got one more picture before, and then we'll talk about some of the group trips that we've run and planned. I just briefly wanted to touch on some of the other local collaborators that we have and the people who've been pioneering some different sections. And I thought I'd mention Ahmed Rizani. This is a beautiful picture here taken by Emily Garthwaite, who was on the last webinar that we did. But Ahmed, as much as anyone, exemplifies this sort of reception that we've been given as we walk and the vision that he has for the trail. So Laween, what do you first remember about meeting Ahmed?
Ahmed Rizani is one of the best local guiders or maybe you can call him a hiker as well. Ahmed Rezani had spent 12 years on the mountains as a Peshmerga. He spent 12 or more than 12 years on the mountains and Peshmerga as a Peshmerga. And so he's like full of stories, full of interesting stories, telling us every time, every day he was telling us, every time we were walking with him, telling us. And the most funny stories about him that he spent his honeymoon in the mountains. He got married in the, also he got married in the mountain. So he spent his honeymoon in the mountains and walking and flew to Iran. He has stories about how he fled to Iran and had come back through mountains, how he walked 5 days in a row, non-stop, 5 days walking on the mountains from Rawanduz, which is included in our trails, till the Iranian border. And he crossed the border to Iran and then come back. This is like 15 years ago. So Ahmed was like telling us every time, telling him hundreds of stories about his experience in the mountains.
Yeah, he had a really wonderful, give us a really wonderful sense of perspective as well. Ahmed was able to remind us of how much conflict in the past this region had seen, and how he for many years had to be on the move. He lived in the mountains because he had to. It was the only way he could stay alive. And I think he said to us at one point that he quite literally fought for the right to walk there. He dedicated his life to fighting for the freedom to do something as simple as going for a walk. And so it's turned from a place of refuge into a place of recreation. And I think that's a powerful transformation, which he feels very acutely, and anyone who walks with him and walks on the trails that he shows us feels as well. And as we'll move to the final picture that we have, we for the first time got to show some of the work that we'd done to a small group of other people, of other pioneers. We ran the inaugural group trip on the trail at the end of last year, and as I've hopefully emphasized, this project still in the very, very early stages, but it was wonderful to show those early stages to these people, to Oliver and to Jamie, and Emily and Ben's in there too, and to bring them and for those guests to meet someone like Ahmed and to hear his stories and really begin to feel the depth of experience and connection that someone like him has to these mountains. So this is what we hope that there'll be much more of in years to come.
Thank you both very much. Let's bring you back so people can see your faces. And with this introduction to what your work is, we have some questions for our audience members. And the first question is, now that you've heard what they have to say, what interests you most so far about Kurdistan? And you can answer that right up there, and we'll see some of your answers. We can share them with Leon and Laween. Let's see. I don't know if there it is. So we've got some choices there: landscape and nature, people, history. And if your answer isn't in there, we'll be sending out a survey after the webinar is over, and you can write to us at that time also. So what we're reading is that about half the people are really interested in landscapes, and just slightly less in history. In people. Not a whole lot of history buffs out there. So we look forward to hearing what others other history buffs are showing up. Thank you. Very good. Also, a second question for you is, because we do have a walk in Kurdistan currently scheduled for October, and we don't know yet what's going to happen. We haven't canceled it. We would really like to hold out hope that may happen. I'd like Leon and Laween, please to talk about that. But would you like to receive updates on our walks in Iraqi Kurdistan as travel conditions allow? We don't go this fall, we'll certainly be scheduling something for the spring of 2021. So we have 100% yes at this point. Thank you very much for that answer. Appreciate it very much. So what's the forecast, Laween, for what is your imagination? Of course, nobody's going to hold you to this because none of us has a crystal ball. But what are your thoughts about the possibilities of walking in the Kurdish region of northern Iraq this fall or next spring?
We should, first of all, the challenge of hiking in Kurdistan is COVID-19 pandemic. So we, for API as well, with Leon, we had the plans for February, for June, but all of them had been stopped because of COVID-19. So I think the only challenge is COVID-19. As soon as hopefully this will be over, so we will hike again, we will develop our trails again, we will have more guests. That's our aim. That's to hike more, extend, develop our trails, and have more guests, more people to see our culture, more people to see our country, more people to explore our country, and we ourselves to explore our country as well and exchange cultures, to see more guests, receive their cultures, and talk about our culture to them. Because what API is doing, and a trail is not just by walking. By walking, you are exchanging culture. It's like a bridge to connect cultures together. Last trip, when we have a guest at our trip last November, so we had a different culture people, everyone from different culture. So it was a pleasure to talk to them, to receive from them, to know their culture, to know about hiking, anything, all aspects of life from their culture. And then at the same time, I was happy and glad to talk to them, to be able to deliver my culture to them. So I think that in the soon future we will be able to hike again and be on our trails again and develop our trails.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best possible answer there is. We don't know what'll happen in Kurdistan or anywhere else in the world, but we can be reasonably optimistic. I think that as soon as we can travel again, we'll be back out in the mountains. Oh, Anissa, we've lost your voice. We've lost your.
I was on mute. Thank you. You got me now? Okay, so there came a question. I see how dark it is now. It's nighttime for you now, Laween. When you were talking about the cultural exchange, Laween, we got a question from Christy Miller who says, what parallels in the human condition do you see when you compare English literature and Syrian literature, picking up on your expertise there in literature and also in the opportunities of walking together with people? What are maybe 2 or 3 things that you notice that are absolutely common to all of us?
First of all, through exchange, the culture means the way of thinking, how people are thinking, how people are dealing with the subject. This is a kind of culture. I mean, a kind of dealing. Maybe it's simplest thing. For example, with the guest, as a way of drinking a tea, a way of reading, a way of sitting, a way of having a food. Food is a culture. A way of talking. A language is a culture. So. What I mean that all, even if it's small details, teeny details, you can understand the culture or the society of other people through them, through the activity, behaviors, how people, calm people, or this people are dealing with this matter in this way, or the other people are dealing in another way. So food, as I mentioned, the food, the language, all of them combined may create culture. So This is what I mean by culture.
Thank you. And would you talk a little, perhaps, Leon, about safety issues? Is it safe to walk along the Iranian border? We're talking about a post-conflict region. What are some of the hurdles you come across?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I realize we probably should have started with some of that context. So, I mean, the Kurdistan region is semi-autonomous, and therefore is, let's say, like politically quite a different entity from the rest of Iraq. It's very easy to get there when there's not a pandemic. You can arrive at Erbil airport and get a visa on arrival, and so on. And so, safety concerns, all of those sorts of things, it's worth just reminding everyone that those are there's nothing to worry about, no more than anywhere else in the world, and probably a lot less than certain places. On the trail, there are challenges. There's been a lot of conflict here in the past. There are a lot of huge number of unexploded ordnance and mines on the mountains, and a lot of those areas there's never been the facility to properly mark up where those areas are, and certainly not to remove them. Now, any people who live and work in those areas, of course, know where they are. The shepherds, the farmers, the people in the villages, anyone who walks follows those local experts' advice and where they are. And of course, we follow the advice of everyone else. All of the trails that we've been using are very well established and have been walked on for many numbers of years by people who live in the areas. But it does limit us in our exploration, let's say, because we can only use trails that people are absolutely certain are safe. Safety, as you imagine, would be the top priority for an endeavor like this. And what we hope, I mean, we're working now to create the sustainable trail development plan for the future. And part of that will be how to implement the best possible strategy to allow people to come and enjoy this, and to allow people who live along the trail to enjoy it as well, and to welcome and engage with hikers, as Laween so articulately described. Another part of it might be to look at ways in which our project can help to start to remove some of those threats, like the minefields, how we can properly cordon them off to make life better for those who live alongside them, and eventually to also try and remove them. And it's a huge project. There's more unexploded mines per square meter in this part of Iraq than just about anywhere else in the world. But it would be a really wonderful objective for us to have alongside the development of the trail.
That's a wonderful lead into what a request to our audience to think about the extraordinary work. You know, we set out to start a trail, and we're talking about cordoning off landmines to make a geography safer for walkers from other places, but also for the local people. I think the kind of ripple effect of what we do here at API continues to astonish and amaze and delight me every time we set foot someplace new. So I really want to acknowledge that and thank you for that, and tell you that this is a nonprofit. We, as they say on public television, you know, we live thanks to the support of people like you, and we're delighted to bring you these informational webinars and expose you and explore together geographies and get to know really interesting people, and you know, see the city of Erbil, which I've never seen any of before, at least not live in a moment like that. So please consider a gift to the Abraham Path Initiative through our website, abrahampath.org. If you look in your control panel, you'll find our 2019 annual report, which gives you a sense of what we're up to, and it includes, in fact, a whole couple of pages on scouting trail in the Kurdish region of northern Iraq, and there's Laween himself right there. So you have your own photo of Laween that you could have with you. We also have resources there for you, so you can see, stay in touch with Laween and with Leon through Facebook and Instagram. Also a list of our upcoming webinars. and we would love to see you on those as well. Leon, would you say just a couple words about our closing video? Because we're at the top of the hour now and we've got to say goodbye.
This is a short trailer from comprises some footage that we shot on one of the very first journeys that Laween and I made together with Miran. So you'll see a car that's driving us around between some of the trails. That's driven by Mr. Miran in the background there, and with a good friend of mine, a filmmaker called Ben Sherlock from the UK. And it was when we initially started to explore some of the diversity and variety of these landscapes and places that you've heard so much about. So I hope it brings a little bit of this to life, and we will be releasing a 20-minute film from that journey at end of 2017, early 2018 it was made, and I hope it excites you even more about the potential of what we've got here.
Thank you to Leon, thank you to Miran, thank you to Laween, really from here. And we give you the gift of the world premiere of this trailer of Leon's film. Thanks for joining us. I'd like to see you again in a couple of weeks. Shukran, ma'asalama.
We've just arrived in Kurdistan, and we've just heard that there's a gathering of Sufi mystics. This whole thing is about love, which is why anyone's welcome. In a region like this, that's an important message to hear. This is the amazing thing about Khalid, is that he turned up in his polished brown shoes. He looks more like a lawyer than a hiker. But as soon as he gets on the mountain, he's at home. We've heard about this trail in Amadib. We're going to walk the old donkey track to Mosul. I can't imagine anywhere on earth I'd rather be right now. We're surrounded by mountains. We're joining a shepherd, and it is bloody freezing. These guys are tough. The next part of our journey has brought us to a temple cut into the side of a rock. This seems a terrible, terrible idea. There's so much here, there's so much coexistence between ethnicities, between religions, between tribes. It doesn't get talked about. We came here looking for trails and for tales, and we found an abundance of both. Yeah, that works.
Yeah?